We're just thrilled to death that you're here, and I've learned something new about Zoom in the last week or so. Maybe it was a software push or something, but I actually have all of you on the screen, and then on the other screen I have the presentation that you see. And I didn't realize that I could actually see everybody and the presentation at the same time. Usually you've got that little band along the side, and so I've just been using Zoom for months. At the same time, I had no idea that this capability existed, so I have the best of both worlds. Um, Moving on in our discussion, thank you again for being here. We're going to talk about 2020 in review very briefly. I want to spend some considerable time letting Jory and Melanie update us on the Middle Mile Network. I want to talk a bit about smart city and digital literacy, and try to close out the morning talking about communications and community building of you all as stakeholders. And we'll have hopefully time remaining for a roundtable and your municipal updates in the process of all this. So that's what the agenda looks like, and we'll dive in. Oh,
Bill, just had a quick question for you.
sure.
Are you recording this session?
Sasha, did you turn it on? The answer is affirmative.
Yes, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the reminder, Jory, because it slipped off my radar, and I appreciate you bringing it back up. Because some people I know couldn't make it and were interested in attending after the fact. Um, this is the slide. Hopefully you can all see it. This is going to be very quick. Normally what I do for the first item of the agenda is I reinforce who's paying our bills. We're funded by the Public Utilities Commission, and our job is to really focus on the rural areas, the unserved areas, and really talk about the cause for adoption and the digital inclusion and digital literacy and those kinds of things, because those are the programs available through CPUC. And as part of that, we then look at other funding sources and talk about that. They made a data call about a week, 10 days ago, where they said, tell us what you did last year. And so what I did was there was a bunch of columns in between that says how we did all of this stuff. But I took the primary columns of what our objectives are per our contract, and then I loaded on the far side of the right of the spreadsheet the performance measures. And when you look at all the things that we achieved, the grants that were awarded, the applications that were submitted, the networks that were started, we did it. It was an amazing year, and I really, despite COVID, amongst all of this, it was really quite an incredible year. And it's not just in Ventura County, but as you go on the way up the coast, the discussion of the North County fiber ring up there, the Vandenberg conversations, San Luis Obispo going through a rebooting process and having events this next month. I mean, it's just been quite a year, and it's exciting. So wanted to share that with you, and just say thank you. Thank you for making all of this happen, and letting you know that good things are happening. And I expect that this year the momentum to continue and only accelerate based on everything I'm seeing and hearing. So we'll be talking more about the details of infrastructure and technology as we get into the discussion this morning. But a good place to start is probably on the next slide. Any discussions about this? So you can look at it at your leisure. I don't want to read it to you, but lots of interesting nuggets, and it was a full year.
Related somewhat to this, Bill, I think it's important to let everyone know that they should be watching what's going on in the legislature in California. There are two bills, one in particular that you should be watching, that I can provide a little bit more information on today, and that's Bill SB4. You should be looking at SB4. There'll be opportunities to comment and rewrite the bill. We hope to amend it to make it as good, if not better, than SB 1130, which was going through the sessions last year, but wasn't able to be completed because of just time constraints. So SB 1130 from last year is coming back as SB4, and I just recommend everyone take a look at that. It has significant implications for opening the door for additional CASF funding by the state, possibly $1 billion.
It's terrific, Jory. Thank you for adding that. So Normally, what you normally see on the second slide of the slide deck when these meetings occur are either funding sources, in discussions like Jory just shared, or maybe maps and where we show areas that are unserved that we want to really encourage people to participate in and submit proposals and get funding. So this is just kind of a roll up of last year I wanted to share with you guys today. Moving on, let's talk about middle mile regional networks. In particular for this presentation, Jory, and this one in Ventura County that you've been working on. Jory Wolf, Melanie Downing are with Magellan Advisors, as is Preston, and Preston Young, correct? Preston, that's your last name. Jory, I'll let you take off and give us an update.
Certainly. Bill, would it be possible for me to share my screen?
I think so. Sasha, you're the host. Would you, Jory, let me get off of this and then we'll let you get on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sasha, when you, if you could enable screen sharing. Either that or just make me host.
Sasha?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on 1 second. There we go.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen now. What I'm sharing is a map, and it's obviously not as refined as the map that Bill just shared. This is a map that we started with about 3.5 months ago, working with the folks over at the VDC, the economic development folks, as well as Bill at the Consortium and Sasha, and the county, Terry Theobald, and Brian Palmer, and then 140 plus other people presenting the concept of a broadband middle mile network in Ventura County to the economic development directors, to the public works directors, to the IT directors, and then following up with each and every one of them in individual phone calls, as well as the AWA, and talking to the water districts, particularly the United Water District, the Callegas Water District, and the Casitas Water District, working with Darren Kettle over at BC Trans, and looking at various railroad easements of the North Santa Paula line and the main line that runs through the center of this portion of the county. And many, many other stakeholders, including Caltrans. And what you see here is a gathering of all of the data that we collected on existing assets, being vertical poles, being underground traffic signal conduit, being underground fiber, being capital improvement projects, which were scheduled over the course of the next 1.5 to 5 years. And also existing networks outside of the county boundaries, including the city of Santa Clarita. Benny Ives is on the call today. Santa Clarita is a key connection point for this network, in that Santa Clarita has already perfected a connection to a main point of presence for the internet in downtown Los Angeles. We anticipate that another point of presence will come out of Agoura Hills and a data center there. You'll see that we had plenty of opportunities presented to us that would enable us to construct a network without having to build it from scratch. Again, this took about 3.5 months to collect. This took many, many phone calls, presentations, follow-up, but with the support of all the cities, with the support of the county, with the support of all the public agencies and officials that we've spoken with, we've been able to collect a massive amount of data that ended up resulting in the map that you just saw, that Bill shared with you. And as you can see, I hope everyone can see my new map that Bill was presenting earlier. This new map is actually the filtered down and perfected route map for the Ventura County Middle Mile Broadband Network. The concept here is to provide a broadband network funded through grant funds and using existing assets to lower the cost of building the network segments over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, and incentivizing others to come in to use the broadband network and to do the infill, to build the last mile in Piru, in Fillmore, in Santa Paula, and in Ojai, in Ventura, Oxnard, Port Hueneme, Camarillo, El Rio, Somas, Moore Park, Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, and connect to the cities of Westlake Village in the south and the cities of Santa Clarita in the north. And what I'd like to show you here, Bill had a legend up, and the legend says that basically everything that you see in dark blue is a route that has been determined that can be used by attaching fiber to a pole. The aerial routes are going to be much lower cost to construct, and we'll be doing that on Southern California Edison poles. What you see in red, the red is underground new construction, which is the most costly construction that we can do. And the light blue is joint build projects with the Callegas Water District and the State Water District, which is a participation by many of the water districts, especially the Callegas Water District. It also includes water and sanitation work on the 118 out of the Department of Water and Sanitation for the County of Ventura. So those are in light blue. What you see in green are existing traffic signal networks, and what you see in yellow is existing fiber that's been implemented in various cities. We also aren't showing at the moment the City of Oxnard network, but that will be hopefully joining this map very shortly. They have a very extensive system that will be contributing to connecting, of course, to the red and blue lines that you see in that area, to the City of Oxnard and also to the City of Port Hueneme. This is a redundant fault-tolerant network that is back home to two internet points of presence, again, one through Santa Clarita to One Wilshire downtown and the other one to Agoura Hills. Our process here in collecting all of these existing assets and going on aerial poles has been to reduce the cost of the network. We're in the process now of doing that costing. Preston is got all the route miles for every one of these types of construction on each of these segments along the 126, along the 150 and the 33, through the basin of Oxnard, the City of Ventura, Camarillo, and Port Hueneme, along the 118 and down through Santa Rosa Road and Pleasant Valley Road to get into Thousand Oaks and into Westlake Village. So the network, when we started, was about $38 million if we were to build it all new underground construction. We don't have a dollar figure yet, but we do believe that these approaches have now cut the cost of the network almost in half. And so we will be sharing these updates with you ongoing as we now start calculating the mileage, which Preston Young on Magellan's team is working on right now. And we'll be reporting back to you and working with all of you and your officials and your leaders in discussing how we use these assets, but also how we apply together for grant opportunities. Our next step, and I'm going to turn this over to Melanie Downing, is an RFI, and we're reaching out to the service providers in the area. We spoke to about 14 different companies during the course of the last 3.5 months. And we're going to be receiving information from them in a written form as to what their interest is in using portions of this backbone network, either joint building with us, leasing from us, leasing to us as we build it, and also doing the last mile build into each of these communities. Melanie?
Yeah, thanks, Dory. So we do have the RFI, and we've already talked to a number of service providers, as Dory has said, so they know that this is coming. We're currently in the second draft of the RFI. We've determined that some edits needed to be made. We want to make sure that it's very open to innovative approaches and that it covers all of the models that Dory spoke of to attract plenty of responses and really collect some more information about the level of interest in the region for helping us build and actually use this network as well. We want to make sure also that there's a focus on unserved and underserved areas within the county. We know that there's a big concern out there right now because of COVID, obviously. And so those prioritizations will be made likely once we get the information from the RFI responses. And we hope to finalize the RFI and get it through the county's purchasing department and get it released sometime in early February. We anticipated it'll be about an 8-week response period. We'll also do a meeting with interested parties in that time frame to answer questions. And then we'll collect all the information and go back and take a look at what's next as far as prioritization.
Great. Thank you. So I want to say that this has been an effort that has seen support from all of the cities, from the county, from all the agencies in the public agencies, and even the private sector providers in the county. And everyone agrees that this is something that should move forward, and will be going to the County Board of Supervisors on February 23rd. Terry Theobald will be including this in his message to the County Board Supervisors and asking for support from the County Board of Supervisors to move forward with this design and with submitting applications for grant funding to build out each of these segments of the network, again, over the course of the next year to 3 to 5 years. We're hoping to pick up some low-hanging fruit. Some of these segments are lower in cost. Some of these communities are in dire need because they've been underserved because of lack of investment. And so we're concentrating on areas where there are opportunity zones and that have strong support to be able to obtain grants to be able to provide a service to areas that are underserved or unserved. So we'll be providing updates to everyone over time. We would like to start a communications program where we're going to share this with each of the communities. So we'll be reaching out to you. This was, I know, sort of a last minute presentation, but we did want to get the ball rolling and let everyone know. And I'm really very pleased with all of you attending today, finding the time, especially at quick notice, to attend and hear what was going on. But again, we're going to be following up with you and your other members on your teams in each of your cities and in your agencies to advise you as to not only what the map looks like as you see here, but what the costs of each of the routes will be and what the anticipated priority of each of these build out phases will be as well. I'd like to hand it over to Bill again, and I'll leave the map up for just a little while and allow people to ask questions.
2 points that I wanted to make. Number one is the whole point of the RFI is the fact that this is not just one agency's, it's going to be collaborative in its development. It's not just going to be a single investment, but it's going to be a collaborative investment by many. And so a big part of it is, we've had strong feedback from the private sector, and in terms of participating, and helping and being involved with the various routes that Jory's put up here. And so This is not just going to be public investment, but if there's particularly interest from private parties through the RFI process, we're welcoming it being a public-private undertaking. And so that really is a good goal for all of us to aspire to, is the business opportunities that could exist here for the private sector as well. The second thing is, there'll be discussions of what happens when these routes go through communities. And we're envisioning the fact that this network exists as a catalyst to community networks and in zones within communities that are going to be broadband development zones, for lack of a better word. When all of a sudden you've got primary internet access coming from the east and the west, or the north and the south, all of a sudden the community has the opportunity to link anchor institutions and critical structure participants. And we're hoping that this triggers conversations at City Hall, in each of these communities, about what kind of community network is going to help the community. And it's not only a regional network, but it'll break down to be an interconnection of community networks as well. So how about some questions, inquiries? And we've got time. Any thoughts and questions for Jory or Melanie or Preston?
The last mile has been the big hurdle in getting a lot of these places facilitated. By identifying these assets, do we expect the spectrums and such to be able to come in and get those last mile deployments finished?
That's a good question. And that's the purpose of the RFI, is to determine the level of interest. In the calls that we've had with the 14 service providers, which cover this area, and many who are new entrants who are interested in Ventura County, they've all committed to have an interest in using the middle mile backbone to be able to do the infill. This is, in many areas, going to significantly reduce the cost of them to deploy fiber in these communities, where it would have been almost cost prohibitive to build to them and build this middle mile backbone, and then try to break even on their investments in the last mile. That is the intent. Yes, absolutely.
And just to add to that, Bill mentioned broadband development zones, and that's one of the aspects of the RFI, is asking respondents to identify what specific zones, each of which are kind of defined by the major cities in the county, they're interested in terms of developing last mile connections.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, and Greg, this is Steve Sawyer from Charter. We have met with Jory and John, and as many of you know,
Steve, you're going to have to get closer to your mic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I have problems with my computer.
Yeah, that sounds
audio.
good.
So anyway, we're basically pretty deployed throughout the entire county. So we're interested in seeing the RFI to see where these pockets of unserved areas. As many of you know, our network was built off of the old cable network. It's a hybrid fiber coax network. So we're deployed throughout the residential area for most, if not the entire county. And if there are pockets of unserved areas, we, will hopefully see those in the RFI to determine, how we can play a part and get involved with the project.
Yeah,
for the most part,
that is the intent, Stephen. Again, we're going to be not only focusing on the backbone, but there are zones that we've created, and the zones will be identified in the RFI. There's about 11 zones, each representing each of the. There's 14 zones, each representing communities along the backbone routes. And every community is included in the RFI. So yes, we're looking forward to Spectrum's response to the RFI and how we might be able to assist Spectrum in expanding into those areas that are underserved.
Great. Thanks, Jory. Thanks, Greg.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and for the update, Jory. And I think it's wonderful. And we've made some great, it's amazing what COVID has done as a catalyst for this discussion and how much progress has been made in the last 6, 7 months in this particular area. And, you know, I want to emphasize as well that this is not just one grant request. It's going to be a series of grant requests. I suspect that when it's all said and done, we're going to have private investment. We're going to have USDA funding. We'll have probably CASF funding as well as EDA funding. It's going to be a patchwork quilt of resources by which this gets built. So, okay, let me go back to share my screen. And Jory, are you still the host? I can't hear you.
Let me give it back to you.
Okay.
Um,
Or you that or just enable screen sharing. Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing how we've got this new lexicon with Zoom these days? We have this new function that we're aware of that we never knew existed before. Okay, I'm the host.
Okay, back
Thank
to you,
you.
Bill.
All right. Sounds like a commercial. Back to you. All right. So, moving on to the next slide, I wanted to talk a bit about, and Greg, I'm going to cue you and anybody else that wants to talk about it that has experience. The Coastal Trident Antex exercise. They had a meeting yesterday, Wednesday morning, and they have 48 projects of technology, and I don't want to list them here, but there's a lot of exciting stuff going on related to technology innovation here within the region. And in the past, Coastal Trident has been somewhat military, somewhat focused on public safety. Sheriffs and fire have always been involved. The Port of Hueneme has always been involved, and it's been a major undertaking that spans something like 4 or 5 months. It starts in the January timeframe and it goes to June or July, and series of workup and planning meetings. And then in the spring months of May and June, things happen. They go off on oil platforms and run military exercises, or they might be, going to a scenario at the Port of Hueneme and divers are going in there. In the past, they've had porpoises and seals, the actual mammals, interdicting, terrorists that are, pretending and actually showing that these kinds of technologies exist. They can happen, they can use and be deployed. And over the past 140, 150 different agencies and activities, public and private, have been part of this, and this year is going to be as big as ever. The fact that this is happening, and it's all about technology innovation, is a tremendous opportunity for us as a region. And so we're taking our smart city discussion and wanting to line up with this. So I've given you a very complex story in about a minute and a half. There's things that are going to happen. I think we've all got the memo related to infrastructure being developed. I think we all know that in the next several years, we're going to have fiber connecting us. Last mile woes will be solved, and we're going to have capacity. But now the discussion focuses in on what does our future cities look like, and how do we put technology on this infrastructure. And so in what I heard yesterday, there's half a dozen experiments, they call it, of technologies involving autonomous vehicles, air, land, and sea. There's more experiments that are going to be conducted related on security and surveillance. And so in just calling around to a number of you this last week, asking if you'd be interested in participating and putting some projects in there and then maybe even hosting some of these things to see what's going on. Got a series of thumbs up from a number of folks, ranging from just having surveillance of what happens in the Ventura Riverbed or the Santa Clara Riverbed. How do we keep track of kids coming and going from schools that maybe they get to school and they disappear and go off the grid, to the smart port. Transportation, I talked with Darren, and the whole idea of touchless ticketing, it's a cool technology, cool opportunity. What can we do to push the envelope and do more? And obviously the long-term discussion in transportation is, can we be one of the first places equipped for autonomous vehicles? I mean, that's out there, but how close? The sooner we get there, the sooner we can lead other regions in this conversation. So it's an exciting time. Greg Hayward has been involved for a number of years. Greg, we've got a podcast that we just put out, which you talk about it. I don't know if you want to add any. What are you on the moon today?
That's correct. My space shuttle has docked. I'm establishing sort of a Grubhub 7-Eleven on the moon, so to facilitate travel going forward.
Why don't you share your thoughts about Coastal Trident Antex? And you've been there a number of years now with technology and participating with your technologies in the exercise.
It's a invaluable resource. It was defense focused, but now they're really seeing that, much like NASA, the technology transfer opportunity that can occur by exploring relationships where you think only X is applicable. You may be able to find other ways to go about it, or allies to collaborate with to expand upon it, those kind of things. And the in-kind assets you have access to, the base, the million-gallon tank, the airspace for drones and those kind of things, is something that you do not have access to in any other realm. And then to have the opportunity to present that tech to a very interested audience of port authorities and the Navy really brings the value quite a bit in line with, any incubator startup or any of those kind of exposure opportunities. So I would encourage anybody that if you have a tech or an interest in just coming and seeing the demonstration event, to get in touch with myself or Bill, and we'll put you in the right direction.
A little known secret, I've grown up in the defense industry, a little known secret is that Ventura County, it's what saved the military bases 20 years ago. Ventura County is where people come to do test and evaluation. We've got the range, we've got all of this activity, we've got the human capital, and we got the deep water port. This is the place where you exercise assets, technologies, and any day of the week, you'll find activities occurring for test and evaluation. What we're really trying to do now is expand the aperture to not be just test and evaluation of military assets, but can you imagine if Ventura County became recognized as a place to do test and evaluation for smart city activities and technologies as well? Can you think of the benefit we would have in our municipalities? So it is an economic development strategy. It's a great bold vision. We have a unique place. The quality of life is impeccable, and our communities are sized just right for us. We have a high standard of living. All we need is this technology innovation component to make our region really stand out and exceptional. And so that's kind of the direction we're pushing here with all of this.
And you need the infrastructure.
Yep.
We have big companies that are key players in this space. The work Magellan's doing to get the communities to all have broadband access at higher speeds will allow bigger companies to come here as well. So it's really creating a broader ecosystem and a lot of reciprocity and collaboration.
And it's not just Ventura County, we're talking about the Central Coast. I mean, what's happening at Vandenberg with the spaceport and the partners that they've got up there it fits in, and there's a very close synergy between that community of the Air Force versus our community of the Navy and what goes on off the coast. So it's an exciting time, an exciting place to be. We're in the best part of the country, in my humble opinion. So any other comments about this before we move on to the next slide? Thank you, Greg. Digital inclusion. This is an interesting conversation. We've been talking about it since the beginning of the consortium. Kudos to Greg for moving out with this initiative of BroadShare, which is an initiative we'll talk about down the road probably very soon. And it's going to be part of the Coastal Trident exercise, which is ubiquitous broadband availability. It's something that he's looking to do. Also, thank you to the County of Ventura and what the library system is doing related to mobile libraries, for lack of a better word, but it's mobile computer labs where you can drive into an unserved neighborhood, or or actually provide a classroom setting to a unique community, and provide internet access, and as well as training and learning through that mobile facility. And they've just applied to the CPUC for funding, and we've been going back and forth, and we're excited for that model and to be able to point that as a best practice. So have had conversations with the community foundation, and one thing that in going back and forth and understanding how can we solve this digital divide, it's not for lack of a connection. We really are at high levels of deployment. Our numbers are like 98%, in terms of service, levels of service throughout our region. The problem is there's communities aren't using it. They're not buying it. They're not subscribing, and there's reasons for that. And I think that one of the best learning experiences we had was this last year with the census 2020 situation, where the complete count. And what the Community Foundation did is they coordinated a task force, a tiger team, a task force, you name it. It was a whole effort to get out and complete the census, and it was a digital census into these communities. And what the communities, the key strategy were these bridge builders. They were the trusted agents. They were the people that are part of the community building their own community network, for lack of a better description. And from that, I think the model has been set. I think it worked. It was successful. We did a good job last year in getting the census complete count done. But now we want to take that same approach and talk about that approach for broadband and broadband adoption. And so, instead of trying at the regional level, we're, to take this level forward, we are going to have a regional discussion about this. But I think the best that we can do at the regional level is to recognize and impress upon the various communities that exist throughout the region that there's going to be problem solvings that are going to be unique to the community. You can't, if you've got a community with some kind of community experience that has issues, or perceived or real otherwise, I mean, they're going to develop the strategy to those issues. Versus in my case, my dad is 95. He'll never, at this point, feel like he needs the internet. And so when you deal with the geriatric side of things, those issues are going to be very different than socioeconomic or, all the other things that separate us and make our world of experience so much different. And so it's a community by community by community step, because the barriers are all different based on what communities we're talking about. Each community is going to have to develop its own unique strategies. And at the regional level, we can coordinate the conversation, but it's not our conversation to have. And what we've got to be able to do is push down and make it very local. And so that's what this model is about. It really is about trying to be a catalyst for that conversation to occur, to invite people from the communities to come together, to talk about the imperative of why this is important and what needs to be done. And after that conversation gets started and everybody's in a room together, to invent solutions that are going to be unique. And if you look at what happened last year, and you hear some of the success stories of how you did the get out and complete the census count, and the uniqueness that each community have, that's the approach we're going to need. One community will do it different, completely different than another community based on where they're coming from. And eventually, after the strategies are in place and planned and underway, we want to inspire for action. We want people, and it's the strategy for digital inclusion. It's not because the infrastructure's not there. It's there. It's going to continue to grow and capacity increase. This is a human thing, and we're going to have to deal with it, person to person in unique ways. So it's taken a long time to realize the epiphany, the light bulb's coming on. We're working very much on a transformational presentation that I've alluded to in our past meetings. It'll feed into this quite a bit. But, I think that we're reaching a tipping point and gaining some good understanding. Last year's effort was a great starting spot. for those that have been involved or have, are key stakeholders in this topic, you want to, compliment what I've said, and, or even challenge it for, for all I care. Give me your perspective in terms of your respective outcomes and your thoughts. And Greg, you've always been a champion of inclusion and in this divide. What did I cover it well, or what would you add?
Absolutely. You always do a great job, Bill. The census taught us a lot about a trust issue that exists. And then I have the blessing of very deep and very diverse friends, and I have gone to them and seen, firsthand the pushback. Because when you see a headline that says 1 in 4 California students doesn't have access to broadband, it just doesn't make sense. And so there's scapegoating or pushback or whatever you want to call it that is not allowing these children to get the access they need. And so I think there's a place for a ubiquitous, non-tethered, non-registered, safe environment for children to use and to put it out there like clean air or water without any kind of pretense on who can have access to it or why. So that's what we're really pushing for.
Other comments on this topic? Okay. It's an ongoing conversation, and we'll bring you status reports every time we get together.
Bill, this is Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Steve?
So I just wanted to make the distinction, as I know we talked about the difference between access to the internet and adoption, given that the hurdles are the cost of a computer or the monthly service charge, and trying to make that distinction. And again, I request of all the city representatives, if you're hearing of issues within your respective cities of school districts or students who are not able to get access, if you could please send me that information. The more specific you can be, the better, such as addresses, so we can verify that yes, internet may be available, and it's more an issue of adoption rather than lack of accessibility to the internet. So I'll put my contact information in the chat for folks to send me any details that they might have in their respective communities.
Thank you, Steve. And to just piggyback on what you've said, the numbers are what Greg said about 40%. Greg, is that the number you used? Are not. On the other hand, 98% of our CPUC data shows that our region is 98% enabled. So it's not for the lack of not being there, but it's the human side of making the connection and making it work. And it's a very, very wide spectrum of reasons why people don't use it or haven't used it or don't know, they don't understand. I mean, and we're going to have to unpeel all of those reasons. And it may be unique from house to house to house, or we may find certain themes and certain threads, but the programs that we have for training, the programs we have for reaching out and providing security, the programs we provide to have people gaining confidence and comfortability. I mean, all of those things are going to be part of that conversation.
Bill, if I might add another dimension to this, Greg, if you want to go ahead and say something, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead, Joy. Thank you.
One of the metrics that we forget is housing. And many of the people who are not included, it's not a matter of, again, of connectivity for their communities. It's a matter of housing and where they're housed. Most of the people who are underserved are, yes, and in some cases in underserved communities, but the majority of them are in multi-dwelling unit housing and also in low-income housing units. And these properties, both the MDUs for private sector property owners, as well as multi-dwelling unit housing for low-income housing, they don't have the connectivity. They don't have the wiring in the buildings to be able to connect the units. And in many cases, what I've run into myself, when we were trying to get Verizon to implement FiOS, for example, in the city of Santa Monica, many of the landlords, and Santa Monica is 80% multi-dwelling unit, I would say the majority, about 53% of all landlords, had no interest at all in providing broadband connectivity to their multi-dwelling units. So this is a societal factor, as you've mentioned, and as Greg has mentioned, and it's something that has to be overcome programmatically within each of the communities. We're talking to many foundations now who are interested in helping the digital divide, helping digital literacy and inclusion. And they're wanting to hear from cities about what programs they're launching that they can contribute to help for after school programs, to help for digital arts like digital video, digital music, editing, and others. Learning to surf the web for homework and for other research, how to even start a small business as well. So these things, again, as Greg said and you have said, Bill, are societal, and these obstacles have to be considered, and housing is one of those elements.
Absolutely, and we have to bring the water to the horses, as it were. And then as we unfortunately face a greater homeless population, that problem gets exacerbated even further. So making the broadband accessible, like they just did in Utah, for instance, but it came at great expense standing up their own network. So if we can supplement that expense through a nonprofit model and really give the kids a chance to be able to connect wherever they may be and get off the home networks and all those other kind of peripheral things, we stand a good chance of increasing that adoption and that utility.
Okay. The one thing I want to mention is just what is the role of a consortium in all this? And we don't have the answers. I think my feeling is, what we can do is support the cause. We can certainly communicate as we are. I mean, you all are the experts in terms of your particular communities. You are the experts in terms of your particular subject matter, about this particular issue. I mean, we can certainly serve as the network to get to you. What Steve's talking about with Charter, they were convening meetings on this topic in Oxnard a couple years ago. Kyle Detz with Cox up there, they've got some great programs that they're running, related to digital literacy and all that. We certainly can be linking to within those areas that they serve. And so we don't want to do anything that's going to be duplicative of the expertise and the knowledge and the learning that's already occurred. What we do want to do is make everybody aware of it and link to it, and turn it into a resource network for this conversation to occur. So that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing, but we're going to need the people on the front line, and that's going to be the challenge that we pray for over the next couple of months.
And Bill, if I can chime in from the Moorpark perspective, there is tremendous value in having these regional discussions. On this front, like as you mentioned and others have, every community is a little bit unique. So, from Moorpark, we're the youngest city in Ventura County, which means that the overwhelming majority of our multifamily housing, for example, was built in the last 20 years. So we have, that's less of an issue for us. Steve and Charter have done a great job. We have connected, we have brought the water you mentioned to the horses. The challenge that we now have here in Moorpark is that trust issue. We can't convince the horses to drink that water, so to speak. We have taken numerous swings. We went down our census playbook. In Moorpark, we actually had the highest response rate in the census in Ventura County. And as much as we could outside of COVID, we ran it. We were at points of social service. We had direct mailers in English, Spanish. We had translations available, translators available. And although we swing for the fences, the reality is we swung and missed in one case, we hit a foul ball in another, and we have not had the success that we can say, hey, this is what worked here, let's share that out there. We are retooling and constantly refining our efforts. Right now, we're focusing on targeting micro communities and identifying specific individuals that are these community leaders to build that trust. And if it works, we absolutely will share it. And if there's anything in Oxnard or Ventura or in Cox World or Spectrum or AT&T or whoever it is, sharing that absolutely does help, and it will help our efforts on the ground.
Thank you, Brian.
Bill, George Amendola here. The conversation about the lack of broadband available to MDUs and residents, it really comes down long-term to a policy issue at the California Public Utilities Commission. And in addition, at the local building code in issuing of building permits. If all new construction is mandated to be broadband ready for internal wiring, that solves a big part of the adaptability issue, cost aside, and affordability aside. But then in addition, as time goes on and there's, obsolescence or replacement, in theory that should cure some of this long term. However, in the short run, the business models of revenue sharing with MDUs to private owners exist. However, it's completely opt-in and subjective as far as a private enterprise. It has been going on in more urban, more dense environments. However, in our environment, financially, it just doesn't make sense from a business model.
Access is a problem for sure, but it's not the big problem. I think the bigger problem is that if you had to accept a cable service that had all the different movie channels and all the different adult channels, and your children could access it from any room in the house, you wouldn't have it. And I think there's a big fear in a lot of communities, religious, minority, whatever it may be, about bringing this Pandora's box into their homes and the distrust of it. So if we can sequester the content and make it appropriate to the age group and get the kids off the home broadband network, I think it goes a long way for people to being able to say, okay, they can use that kind of thing. And when the schools issue the passcodes and the mechanisms that are configured to be able to connect to it, that reduces the decision making even further.
Folks, we got to keep moving. Thank you for the comments on all of that. It's going to be an ongoing conversation. What I'd like to do now is go to the next slide and talk. Sasha, I want you to, if you don't mind, keep it to 3 to 5 minutes, very, very short on this. And then we'll do a municipality update and, around the table, and hopefully we'll be able to have 5 or 10 minutes left over for any other topics that you want to discuss. So for the city reps interested in sharing, I'm giving you a 5-minute cue, and would appreciate any updates that you have from your particular cities. But Sasha, why don't you talk to the slide about this, what you've been doing on LinkedIn and social networking and all that.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Absolutely. This will be quick anyways. It's a pretty fast update, but in terms of social media, we're doing really well on LinkedIn and growing a good a group there, but I think we'd like to take it one step further. And a lot of you are going to see now or in the near future an invite to a group called Broadband Café Connect on LinkedIn. And listed here on the left are all the things that we're going to aim to do with that group. It's just going to keep us more connected. And if you do join that group, we want you to be able to publicly comment on anything that we're currently discussing, or any activities or future events and such. So please feel free to accept that group, connect there, and we look forward to hearing from you online.
So we're going through an evolution as a consortium. We're going from content sharing to community development, and so we're looking to use LinkedIn as a place to develop a community. And from Matt, we're going to be moving from community development to collaboration online. And so it's, who knew? These are exciting times for the use of information sharing and technology in virtual space. Um, I also wanted to mention that there is an event I mentioned earlier in San Luis Obispo County. More information will be, delivered to you as we, through our weekly mailouts. 2 days. It's for an hour and a half each day, on February 18th and February 25th. And they're starting the conversation very wide in terms of talking about number of things we've been talking about this morning. But by the second day, they want to get very specific and follow in the footsteps of what we're doing in terms of middle mile networks and economic development and technologies and those discussions. So they're a little bit behind the ball, but they're going to accelerate fast, and we want to provide them that kind of runway in which they can do that. And so you may want to stay tuned and be aware and be interested in participating and listening into that conversation. Okay, so stakeholder updates. Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot first, if I can. How's the city of Moore Park doing? And then we'll go to listen to some of the other cities and what they might be interested in sharing.
Sure, we're past our planning stage and into the accomplishment stage. So last month I reported that we got our first 5G agreement in place with AT&T to put 5G in our cell sites. The next step, we are now in serious talks with another ISP to light up one of our 3 business parks that is not well served with broadband. We're doing some information sharing with who those businesses are and what they're doing and that kind of thing, and they're costing it out for possible entry. So that was one of our key goals of actual on the ground helping people deliverables. So we're proud to report that, and that's what we've been focused on the past month.
Congratulations on that business part, because I know that's been a sticking point for a number of years now.
Yes.
So it's great that you've been able to find a solution and somebody interested in providing that. Who's next? Jamie, you want to talk about Ojai or?
Sure. We're still moving forward, identifying our priorities as to if and when we get the broadband, where it will go. Goes from our medical to business, city, utilities, etc. We're even throwing in, because we do deal with drought, we're really putting water in this mix as something that might be of interest to really take advantage of having the broadband technology. And wildfires, figuring out how we might apply it towards the 2 big threats to our whole community and region here. So we're kind of really excited about seeing how, as a smart city type approaches, we can approach even those 2 things that are actually threats. I just wanted to comment, it seems like a game changer, this middle mile map. All along up until today, I think we were under the impression we were waiting for Caltrans to do a trenching type of approach to get broadband to Ojai. And if we're looking at aerial, I think that really adds a lot of positive enthusiasm on our part, because the others seem like it'll never happen. And now I can easily see, if we're going to entertain aerial as a solution, I feel that this is really going to make things move faster and quicker for us to be able to be connected.
Yeah, agree. Hey, Paul, it's been an age since you talked about Cuyama. You want to give us a quick update from your perspective of what's happening up there?
Well, not much actually. There is a small provider up here. I'm actually getting connected with them, but they're a small wireless provider that use the unlicensed band beamed in from over from Bakersfield, and so they've put a couple temporary towers in on some property, and so they're able to hit parts of the community of New Cuyama, and they provide service to some of the larger ranches out here, but the service isn't that reliable, and I haven't got mine installed yet, and I'm in the process, and So well, I'll know more about the service then. Other than that, you know, under one of the federal auctions, it's RDOF. I don't know.
RDOF. Yeah.
Yeah, RDOF. You know, they granted funding here for parts of the Cuyama Valley, but as I believe that has a 10-year build out. So I haven't yet contacted the company that won the bid here, and to see where we might lie in that 10-year span. But other than that, the need's still here. Somebody talked about students. I know Steve did, not having access, and Steve knows well that there's none of our students really have access here other than with hotspots on cell service, and a little bit of satellite that's also been very, very slow these days. So that's all that's happening right now.
So Paul,
I might add though, Bill, that the Doss Williams' office, his chief of staff, Darcel Elliott, would like to be on your mailing list, and so I can send you her information.
please do. So Paul, we might want to just circle around and go back to CPUC CSF staff and say, now that the RDOF award is done, what happens to Frontier's proposal in terms of CSF funding for the fiber going up, you know, directly to the community? I'm not sure they've sorted through all of that yet. That was, you know, I think that we're going to get some clear answers how all the pieces are going to fall with RDOF in the next month or two. But, you know, they did have that proposal. We had two, you know, GeoLinks was interested in, you know, Connect America funding as well for that area. So those things were put on hold until we could get through the RDOF awards. And it's time to figure out whether we've lost them or whether it's been overcome by events or whether those are still going to be looked at. So,
Right. Yeah, I don't believe the RDOF contract's going to fulfill
Yeah.
what the fiber would. And I know GeoLinks got a lot of those bids also
Yep.
granted, but not here. And but yeah, we need to circle back on that.
Okay. Anybody else? City of Oxnard, City of Camarillo, you guys have anything to share today?
Raj, if you're on the call, I'll defer to you.
No, go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead and share with what we're currently doing and what we're thinking of.
Well, I guess on the county project, I know the city is evaluating its participation. We'll be working that out with the management team. Other than that, we're trying to take action on our fiber master plan on the outcomes out of that. So we hope to be moving forward on those initiatives out of our plan in coming months.
Okay. Chris, do you have anything from CPUC? Anything you want to update us on?
I mean, I'd say the big decision. So tell you about RDOF and CASF. Did you see this decision in January? So it's just last week for kicker funds for RDOF. You saw that?
Yeah, and so that was going to be in kind, state of California in kind to the federal dollars, and that's great. I mean, that's going to hopefully be a catalyst to some of these areas to get industry participating, and it's great. I hope that we don't use up some of the other funds, and in terms of what we're trying to do with build out as well. But it's appreciated what's going on there.
Okay, great. The only other thing was I saw a tweet from one of our commissioners last week too, talking about how really about bridging the digital divide and how really broadband should be seen as the fourth utility. So that thinking is definitely taking place at the top.
Yep. Going full circle to Jory's comments, there is legislation, and we see all kinds of convenings coming now where, obviously it's going to impact all the regions, the conversations that are occurring, and hopefully we'll have the funds assigned to make things happen. Have I missed anybody? Anybody want to provide comments on your municipalities that I might have missed? Okay. Any other comments for the good of the order. I just want to once again reiterate thank you for being here. And if you've got anything else to share, just this is the time to go around the round table, if you will, and share it. And otherwise, we'll be convening.
Just real quick, if Jamie or any of the other cities are considering any smart technologies, I would encourage them to contact the companies and push them towards the Coastal Trident platform so that you guys can see it in action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jamie, I'm going to keep, I'm going to keep the whole group, but you struck a chord. The problem you described, there's a number of other cities interested in that problem, and we'll invite you to the party. Make sure that you're aware of those conversations, the technologies involved, the approaches involved, what sensors we can put where. Years ago, not years, 2 years, 3 years, as part of the exercise, they had a company that had worked with Edison called Flame Sniffer. And basically, it was a sensor that was put on power poles that basically could see fire coming or detect fire in the neighborhood or whatever. And we were doing all kinds of exercises in and around using that technology. And it would be a novel smart city technology. But once again, this week we had a fire in my backyard, the Wash, the Santa Clara River. I mean, we've had multiple fires there this year. And it's only a matter of time where these fires, with the winds we've had this week, are going to come and just clean the place out. And we've got to get ahead of them if we can with technology.
Yeah, there's a lot of cities now, especially counties up north, but even here down in neighboring LA County, the city of Hidden Hills has deployed 7 of the smoke detection cameras, and they're deploying another 20. The counties of Marin, Napa, and Sonoma are in the process of getting funding for deploying between 75 to 150 each.
In many cases, we're not talking about creating new technologies. They just exist. It's just a matter of taking it off the shelf and spreading the information around so people know that.
It's that, plus it's getting connectivity for these devices. Yeah.
The backhaul's a big issue.
Yeah.
This is Don Gerkensmeyer from Ventura County Office of Ed. Just along those lines, we've deployed several purple air quality, and that has shown in fires. You can see the the trace of actual winds and all that. So purpleair.com, it's open to anybody, and you can zoom in on Ventura County and Tri-Cities or Tri-Counties.
You've got more than a couple. You've got thousands.
Yeah, well, in the educational community, yes, we've got a couple hundred, but there's other municipalities, I guess, that are plugging them in as well. But it's pretty eye-opening, and you can see all sorts of different data, not just particulate matter and things like that. I did put in the chat. I've been on 2 Zoom meetings. I'm hoping that there will be a recording available for this meeting.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, Don's been one of the folks that have been part of the consortium meeting since the beginning. Don, we had a great meeting with your organization this last week, and talking about technology in schools, and obviously broadband access was one of those technologies of key interest, and we appreciate the support of your organization to help us and connect with us on that. And the other one was just school facility security, and so we just think that we're going to see what we can do to find some technologies that we can play with, and the fact that you'd be interested in hosting companies with these technologies and being part of a conversation about these technologies. It's all good. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right, folks.
Bill, just a quick comment.
Sure, Roger.
Raja, I'll be reaching out to you to get additional information regarding the smart city and what Port of Whiting is currently doing. That's just my natural interest.
Okay.
It just also, we're supporting public safety, and we have a lot of devices out there, and I'd like to see what are some of those things, the newer technology as far as surveillance systems or community cameras and those kind of things.
Okay. Another, Kevin is part of the conversation, but another resource that I've relied upon over the years has been your EOC manager, Scott Brewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been part of this all along. And so in terms of technologies, if you've got things that you want to see, we want to go out and be a network that brings you the resources, the technologies to do demos. We're not asking for money. What we're asking for is an audience where we can bring you the information and you can see for yourself and move the conversation forward that way.
Perfect.
So we just want to be a catalyst for the dialogue.
Thank
And
you for that.
knowing that you've got to come up with your own ROI on your own, whether
Yeah.
it's worth it or not. We just want to have the information available. So great. Any other comments? All right, everybody. We'll hope to see you again real soon, next month, same time, third Thursday, and if not sooner. I think I'm going to try to push to have this whole technology innovation discussion. I think I'm going to try to schedule a webinar in the next couple of weeks to talk about Coastal Triad and Antex and do more of a deep dive. I'll get some of the players that are putting that all together and try to, hopefully I can give you more details on Monday's missive that we're going to put out of what day that'll be and what we'll talk about. So we'll keep this conversation moving.
Perfect.
Anything else? Going once, going twice? Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.